Hey everyone, welcome back, and hello to you new people too. Today I'm going to be doing a video on eyeshadow tips that you should know, and I'm going to talk about my favorite brushes. First thing I want to tell you is I have hooded eyes, and I think I have slightly downturned hooded eyes at the outer corner. So what that means is when I'm looking straight at you, you can't really see much of my mobile lid space. This is the mobile lid. My mobile lid is very small. This is the hood of my eye. It's the part that like kind of droops over the mobile lid. This is my brow bone, outer corner, inner corner, lower lid. In my opinion, you should always use eyeshadow primer. I use primer because I have oily hooded lids. This part of my lid will basically rub against this part of my lid and destroy any eyeshadow look I'm wearing if I don't use an eyeshadow primer, usually within 20 minutes. So if I spend an hour doing my makeup, I want it to last longer than 20 minutes. There are basically a couple different kinds of primers. You have your paint pot type primers like Beauty Bakery. Then you have your tube primers more like Too Faced Shadow Insurance or Urban Decay Primer Potion. You also have your stick primers like the Kat Von D. I'm gonna put on some primer, and because I have long nails, I'm just gonna take this brush, which is the Urban Decay, I think it's a large eyeshadow brush, and I'm just blending the eyeshadow primer out onto my eye. Okay, so after you have your primer on, you should apply a base shade. That means a shade that either closely matches your skin tone or is a lighter color depending on the type of look that you're going for. So I'm going to use this Real Techniques base shade brush, and I'm going to apply the foundation that I'm wearing today, which is bareMinerals Dawn 2. And basically, I'm just putting this all over on top of the primer to sort of set the primer. I wish somebody had told me this years ago because it makes it so much easier to blend when you use a base shade. I'm going to use Anastasia Beverly Hills Baby Cakes. So for the next step, I'm going to take the Urban Decay Iconic eyeshadow brush. So it's wide like this, and then if I turn it like this, it's skinnier. Another similar brush to this would be the Sigma E25. They're similar, they're not identical, but they have like that same wider one way and then narrower the other way. So the next trick is after you apply your primer and your base shade is to apply your transition color. This is the like lighter color that's going to help you create a gradient on your crease or the hood of your eye. Choke bracken the brush so that you basically have like a light handle on it, and then just kind of work the color back and forth. And it's also good to bring it down here to the outer corner of the lid, since usually you're going to want to darken this part anyway for dimension. And I'm kind of just doing like a windshield wiper motion back and forth. And I recommend that you build this color up slowly. The nice thing about this particular brush is that you can also sort of blend in circles to make it smoother, especially like at the outer corner. The color gradient can be smoother. And if you take the color a little bit too high like I did, just go back to your base brush and take the base shade that you choose to blend out the edges. And wherever you put your brush it's going to deposit the most amount of color. So I usually like to stick it like the outer corner of the eye or the outer crease and then work my way in. So you can just work on building the color up. The next brush I want to show you is the Sigma E36. Now this is the brush that I like to use to add an accent to the outer V, or to like blend and cut the crease. I like to use this brush with dark colors because it's really soft and it's pretty tiny. I feel like because it's so small, it gives me a lot of control, because like I don't have a lot of lid space. My eyes are pretty small, but I have a lot of this hood, and so I want to be able to have the most control possible when I'm using a dark color. And I'm sort of gonna do like a C shape. A lot of times when I do this step, what I do is I use an angled eyeshadow brush instead, because you can also do that, because I will use like the angled eyeliner brush right at the outer edge of my lid. You probably saw me do that if you saw my tutorial with the Kat Von D Metal Matte palette. As you can hopefully tell, I'm just really building up the color at the outer corner very softly, and because I've stuck to pinks, this is a pretty natural color gradient. So there's a little bit of definition here, and I really didn't take the color much past maybe like that like halfway mark with the Cherry Cola. And the great thing about this brush is you could actually do your entire crease adding more definition with it, because it's like so soft and easy to use to blend and move color around. It's a great brush. Especially for hooded eyes, because it just kind of lets you work the color like into the socket of the eye. You can see I've added a lot of definition there. Now, I'm looking like at a weird angle because I need to be looking straight forward so that I can make sure that the crease color is going to come up far enough. And that's one of the things I like to do with this brush, because it's tiny enough that it's easy to do this. So you can see the crease color is just barely visible when I'm looking. And again, I'm just kind of working that color in like a C shape or a sideways V, whatever you want to call it, to start with. And then I'm just gradually putting it right here into sort of, I guess, the socket of my eye and working it over. And I wish that I had known about transitional colors and building up your darkest colors sooner, because I used to just slap dark colors on and then wonder why I couldn't blend. And there are two different brushes that I like for blending. I mean, as I mentioned, you could go back with the Iconic brush and blend, or you could use the Urban Decay Tapered Blending brush. So I'm going to take the Tapered Blending brush on this side, and I really kind of do this one in circles as I work it like through the crease, like back and forth. I mean, you can do windshield wiper motions with this too, for sure. But sometimes it's better to just swirl it like in a circle. But if it looks harsh, you can take something like the Iconic brush here and then sort of blend it like this, which I'm just blending one way. Like I'm blending in with this brush. And then sometimes I will blend down to towards the outer lid at like an angle. If you don't feel like whatever you've done is dark enough, you can actually choose yet another color to add on. Like you could go for a black, or you could go for a darker red, or a darker gray, whatever you're trying to accomplish with your colors. Another brush that I really like for blending in the crease is the Urban Decay Large All Over Eyeshadow brush. In this one, you kind of sweep it very softly in a windshield wiper motion, and it helps to just make sure everything is very smooth. This is how I generally like to apply color now to get this part done, and then I want to go into like my lower lid. For the lower lid, the sort of brushes that I think are best to use to apply color would be like the Urban Decay Detailed Smudger or the Makeup Geek pencil brush. And I'm doing about 3/4 of the way in, working my way out. Way out with Cherry Cola. Like right there, it looks still a little harsh, so what I'm going to do is go back with a little bit more Baby Cakes. Just to try and make that look less harsh, like right there. This is another example of why your base shade can kind of erase or lighten if you like make a mistake. Okay, so with hooded eyes, they say that you should mostly stick to mattes, and I don't always agree with that. Sure, mattes or like satin mattes, low sheen shades on the hood part of your eye, I totally get. But on the lid, if you like sparkle, you should wear sparkle. I prefer to use small brushes like this Real Techniques accent brush or the Urban Decay Tightline brush or the Sigma E21. Basically a very small brush like this so that I have control over what I'm doing. I also usually like to drag my upper lid corner down to the inner corner of my lower lid a little bit. And basically you can see the smaller brush size fits just about perfectly onto my lid. Like me and my teeny tiny lids. When I put on lid colors, I tend to pat them on more than anything because usually I'm using a sparkly shade or a duochrome, and I feel like when you pat on those colors, they just look better. You have very little lid space when you have hooded eyes, so you want to make the most of your lid space. You can just kind of press it on here for the inner liner and like stamp it, or you can kind of smudge it like right along this line. And I find it a little bit tricky to do this sometimes because of my lash extensions. That's with me just basically taking this tiny little brush right along the upper lash line and sort of tight lining it or getting as close as I can to my lash line. Okay, now I want to talk about highlighting, and there are a couple different ways that you should highlight, but for hooded eyes like mine, what people recommend is using a matte highlighter from here out, and then you can use like a pearl here. So I'm going to demonstrate what using a sort of soft natural highlight looks like with the Kat Von D Metal Matte palette. This is the shade Bone. So basically sort of like the outer half of the brow is where I'm working this matte highlight. And I feel like if you use a tiny brush like this up here, it just gives you a lot of control and it's really easy to do and to not mess up or anything. Not take it too far in. Here's where you, I guess, would put it for the inner corner. And I just basically patting this at the outer part of my, like under my eyebrow with the color Angel. And again, that's just because I really strongly prefer a shimmery highlight at the inner corner. You can take the Iconic eyeshadow brush to soften it out. Then what I've started doing is when I feel like everything's done, go back over it really, really lightly again, just one more time to make sure everything's about as smooth as it's gonna get. Anyway, I hope you find these eyeshadow tips helpful. I hope that seeing the brushes that I prefer to use is helpful too. Please be sure to let me know what you think in the comments below. If you have any questions, let me know and I will do my best to answer them. If you like this video, give it a thumbs up and share. I love it when you share my videos. It makes my day. And if you haven't already, go ahead and click the subscribe button so you don't miss my next video. Thanks so much for watching.